Welcome everyone to the KidneyX Empower Challenge informational webinar. We are thrilled that you are joining us. I'm going to just pause for a moment so that a few more attendees can join, and then we will dive into introductions and agenda. But with that, I do just want to begin by thanking you for your time and your interest in this important challenge. This is going to be a 60-minute webinar, and at the end, we will be spending some time for Q&A. We ask that you drop your questions into the Q&A box within Zoom, and we will go through those at the end. Try to answer as many questions as possible. We might not get to everything, but we will be updating the KidneyXEmpowerChallenge.org website with these FAQs as we also will be sharing the slides and a YouTube recording of this webinar. With that, Amanda, if you could jump to the next slide. So today we will be hearing from Stefan Konya of the Office of the National Coordinator for Health Technology, or ONC, which resides within the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. We will also be hearing from Dr. Suzanne Watnick of the American Society of Nephrology, as well as Rachel Meyer with the American Society of Nephrology. My name is Oliver Gerland. I'm a challenge strategist with Ensemble Government Services who's been contracted to support this challenge. And with that, let's go to the agenda. So today we will begin with some introductions and background information from ONC and from ASN. Then we will dive into the challenge background and kind of really trying to get at the nature of the problem that we're trying to solve with this prize challenge. We will walk through the prize structure, the submission requirements, i.e. what you and your team needs to submit before the submission deadline. We will go over the judging process as well as the criteria, which is incredibly important so that you understand how your submission will be reviewed and scored. We'll go over the timeline so you understand, crucially when to register and submit. And we will also be looking at the eligibility and rules, as there are specific rules for different organizations or individuals participating. I will go through the how to register process, and then we'll close with some Q&A and concluding remarks. But with that, I would like to pass it over to Stefan Konya of ONC. Take it away.
Thank you so much, Oliver. And thank you to everyone who's joining the call here today to learn about this challenge that we're extremely excited to kick off with our partners at the American Society for Nephrology. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Stefan Konya, and I serve as the Chief of Innovation and Strategic Partnerships at HHS, and specifically within the Office of the National Coordinator for Health IT, or ONC for short. I'm going to walk through just a quick introduction of who ONC is in case this is new to you. We understand the field of nephrology is an area that we've certainly supported and dabbled in over the years, but this is also an exciting time for us because as we are the agency that's helping to administer the challenge for this year under the KidneyX umbrella of programs over the past 5 years or so, we're also kicking off in parallel a series of engagements with the nephrology community and beyond with the assistance of our colleagues at ASN to look at the data needs specifically in that space as well. So more to follow on that. But for today, I wanted to walk through real quickly who ONC is, how we got started, and the kind of work that we do at a large scale, and then turn it over to my colleagues at ASN to walk through a little bit more about the importance of this challenge. So ONC has been around for 20 years, a little over 20 years, actually. It became an actual federal agency under the HITECH Act in 2009. That's when it became an official agency. But prior to that, it actually was first established through executive order during the George Bush administration in around 2003. As you fast forward 2016, the 21st Century Cures Act is lately what's been guiding a lot of our policy focus. And these two pieces of legislation really were centered around getting us off of paper and manila folders. Previous to 2009, most of the healthcare industry was still heavily in filing cabinets and manila folders and on paper. And we've now moved that industry to being over 90% digitized and are still working to plug a lot of the interoperability gaps and challenges. But it basically all comes down to what can we do to support the adoption and utilization of healthcare information technology and more efficient flow of data. Next slide. Currently, our priorities under this administration and my leader at ONC, who is known as the National Coordinator for Health IT, Dr. Tom Keene, our three top areas that we're focused on is access and affordability. And I think especially on the topic of access, this is an area where really we're trying to lean in and help in the field of nephrology with the kidney donor and transplant services area. Data liquidity has always been a key focus areas for us, and I'm always be something that we're going to continue to chase and try to improve on. And then technology evolution, looking at the latest emerging technology trends and what can we do to support earlier development and validation and value and ultimately adoption and utilization of those technologies and responsibly. Next slide. And so then how do we do all of that and how do we focus on these priority areas? Well, we do it through a lot of different standards coordination with industry. It's data standards, it's exchange standards, it's utilization standards. If you think of governance, we do have a certification program. It's probably what we're best known for, where we actually set the criteria for what certified EHR vendors like Epic or Oracle or many others have to adhere to as a minimal floor. And then always promoting greater exchange of data to make sure it's available where it needs to be in the appropriate time and manner and so on. But we do this in partnership on two sides, right? One is internally working across federal government. I'm going to show you just how broad of a responsibility that is in a second here. And then I think even more importantly, working across not only with state governments, but also in local governments, but also with the public. So thinking providers, payers, anybody who's doing anything with healthcare data or healthcare technology, we coordinate with them and at that intersection with all the other federal agencies as well. And we do it really to advance these two key objective areas. Next slide. So when you think about how many federal agencies we work with, well, it's about 40. And yes, I said that correctly, 40. So it's a lot of federal agencies that have something to do with healthcare data or healthcare technology. On your left-hand side, you see about 20 or so that are outside of HHS. The obvious ones being the VA and the DHA that a lot of people understand, as they deliver healthcare services themselves. And there's many other agencies listed on here. Happy to explain how we work with them in what ways if you ever want to grab a coffee together. On the right-hand side, though, these are probably the more obvious ones, and these are all the agencies that fall under the umbrella of HHS. Luckily, we do sit within the Office of the Secretary at HHS, and from that perch get to coordinate with all the operational divisions that fall under the umbrella, as well as our colleagues that also are in the staff division area that sit within that Office of the Secretary, which are the ones on the right there. And so this is something that we continually do on an annual basis throughout the year, working closely with these agencies to ensure we're speaking with one government voice, one HHS voice around more greater interoperability of healthcare data and adoption of technology. Next slide. And so this brings us to our colleagues outside of government. And in this case, in the field of nephrology and kidney care, we've developed a really great partnership with ASN over the years. And we've had different agencies that have taken the torch to work with them, and starting in the CTO's office and our colleagues over at the Office of the Assistant Secretary for Health. And we've always been able to support and participate as much as we could in this challenge. And we're excited for this year's challenge to lean in a little bit more and focus also more on some of the data side through a parallel effort. But this is what it takes. Public-private partnerships, working closely to understand the true needs of the market and opportunities to improve patients' lives and overall improve the experience for clinicians who are trying to improve their lives. So with that, I'm going to turn it to my colleagues, Suzanne Watnick and Rachel Meyer with the American Society for Nephrology. Susan, Rachel.
Thank you so much, Stefan. On behalf of those of us at the American Society of Nephrology, we're honored and delighted to be partnering again with HHS as well as ONC to launch this year's KidneyX Empower Prize. You just heard a little bit about ONC and how it fits in with HHS. Now we're going to talk a little bit about ASN, the private side of the public-private partnership. So the American Society of Nephrology is the world's largest health professional organization. It includes about 90% of all the nephrologists in the United States, as well as health professionals from around the globe in more than 140 countries. ASN truly is the leading scientific organization in the nephrology space, and our vision is to create a world without kidney diseases. As many of you who have joined this today's webinar know, kidney transplantation is really the optimal form of therapy, and within that, living donation, as we'll talk about, is the gold standard. So, in alignment with our mission to transform care for people with kidney diseases, we're excited to be launching this prize today. This is not the first prize competition that ASN and HHS have launched together. In fact, this public-private partnership dates back to 2018 when we first signed a memorandum of understanding. And since that time, we've launched a number of different prizes that span the spectrum of the patient's journey of kidney diseases: prevention, diagnosis, and treatment. So today's challenge, which we'll be discussing, really builds on years of momentum of ASN, the largest health professional organization, and HHS, the regulator and payer for most of healthcare for people with kidney diseases in the United States, coming together to say, living donation is an incredibly important area. Living donors are people who need our support. Let's harness the power of innovators from within nephrology and outside of nephrology to come up with better ways to support them, bolster them, and make living donation transplantation available to more. We're so excited you're here to learn more about the Empower Challenge. Over to you, Dr. Watnick. And next slide.
Thank you very much, Rachel. I'm Suzanne Watnick. I'm a nephrologist, and I'm serving as the health policy scholar at the American Society of Nephrology. And I'll continue the story by discussing a little bit about the challenge background. Many of you may know that kidney failure is a significant public health challenge, and it is a condition for which we have no cure. It is very costly. It costs Medicare alone over $50 billion annually. And truly, kidney transplantation is the optimal therapy for people with end-stage kidney failure. It actually also happens to yield over $500,000 in taxpayer savings per kidney, but demand truly far exceeds the supply that we have. Almost 100,000 Americans are on the kidney transplant wait list, and on that wait list, more than 10 people die every day waiting for a deceased kidney donor to donate a kidney. And so, in comparison to deceased donation, living donation actually does hold improved outcomes. Both deceased and living donation has improved outcomes in terms of improved survival and improved quality of life versus therapies like chronic dialysis. However, living kidney donation is the gold standard, as you heard Ms. Meyer mention. But unfortunately, living donation rates have been flat. Less than 7,000 donors per year is what we have seen now for decades, and it's highlighting the stagnation in the field and really an urgent need for new approaches, practical solutions. And so we know that there are some key friction points and barriers. There are pre-donation information gaps, for example, and it's not very consistent in terms of understanding what the clinical follow-up both during that pre-donation time is, as well as peri and post-donation. There are also many hurdles, both financial, psychosocial, and others. Next slide, please. So thinking a little bit more about these friction points in the donor journey, and these are really high priority barriers that do impede the donor journey in particular. And these are some of the things that contribute to flat donation rates across the 5 key friction points. So pre-donation information and mentorship gaps, as I mentioned on the last slide. Prospective donors don't have access to resources, both scientific resources, trained mentors, and without that reliable community-based information, they might rely on sources that do not contain that same scientific rigor, for example, and it may lead to misinformation. Just in terms of qualifications and eligibility, there are many hurdles, and donors struggle all the time, not just to meet the clinical criteria, but to understand what those criteria are. We don't have the tools or the support for managing the condition that serves as barriers, such as a high body mass index or unstable blood pressure, and that prevents reaching eligibility for surgical transplantation. Financial barriers as well as psychosocial barriers exist. You get lost wages, caregiving disruptions, issues just billing insurance. And this can result in potential donors dropping out from considering donating the gift of life. There can be tools to navigate these stressful challenges, but they're lacking. The administrative and logistical delay, well, let me tell you, we see this all the time. The protocols are not always transparent and they can lead to unnecessary delays or variability in care. And truly, the process is bogged down by some of the administrative burdens or potentially institutional barriers at a transplant center. And lastly, um, post-donation oversight as well as support has could be more consistent, and so donors face uh, sometimes confusion and are not entirely clear about how to receive consistent follow-up care. The systems can do better in terms of addressing unique needs, especially, for example, for parents donating to their children. So these particular friction points highlight the need for interventions to improve the overall living kidney donor experience and to expand that donor pool. Next slide, please. So the challenge objective, next slide. The primary objective of this challenge is to better support living kidney donors, as well as the national effort to expand the number of living kidney donors across the United States. The KidneyX Empower Living Link Prize is a $4 million prize challenge that seeks to develop informational resources, care models, various technological interventions to empower those prospective donors, as well as the clinicians who care for them, and other people with kidney diseases and their families. With that, I'm going to hand it back to Ms. Meyer for the last slide of our portion.
Thanks so much, Dr. Watnick. Hopefully we've piqued your interest. So you've already heard a lot of what is displayed on this slide in remarks already, but I'm going to try to bring it all together to talk about what we're really trying to achieve in terms of objectives. As you've already heard, we're setting a $4 million incentive total prize purse to seek your ideas, whether they're resources, tools, care models that you already have in place or you've dreamed up, or technology-based interventions. Ultimately, we want to empower all of the stakeholders in the system, whether they're people who are thinking about donating to a loved one or a friend, or even to someone they don't know, somebody who's already on the path to becoming a recipient or a living donor themselves, as well as people who have already stepped forward and donated a kidney as a living donor to ensure that we're providing them the continuity and support that they need across the rest of their lifespan. Ultimately, we hope that these will come together to boost the number of living donors in the United States. However, we know we can only achieve that goal if we can smooth out and begin to address some of the well-known friction points that currently get in the way of people who might be interested in becoming or following through with being a living donor. So the areas in which we're seeking your submissions may in fact target some of these friction points. I think a great example that was already referenced was somebody who might need to lose a little bit of weight in order to become a living donor. But maybe there isn't a program or an app out there that's specifically targeted to help people maintain the type of health status that they need to be a great living kidney donor and lose those last few pounds. Why are we so focused on this? Not only is supporting living kidney donors the right thing to do, helping to grow the number of living kidney donors also helps more people get that gold standard of care if they have progressed to kidney failure. And all of this rolls up to supporting a national goal that was established in 2019 under an executive order to double the number of kidney transplants by 2030. So we're excited to see this prize help supercharge our efforts to both support living donors and achieve that goal on behalf of the 37 million Americans who are affected by kidney diseases and the roughly 800,000 or so who have progressed to kidney failure. Next slide. I think.
Yes, I'll jump in here. So again, thank you, Suzanne and Rachel, so much for helping to really bring home the importance of why this challenge needed to be launched. And the call to action to get so many innovators out there, whether they're entrepreneurs, whether they're at academic medical centers, clinicians, administrative staff, policy wonks, you name it. Anybody that has a great idea to share, we want to hear it. And just in a second, we're going to have our colleagues at Ensemble who are helping us manage this challenge go over the exact criteria of who can qualify to apply and the process for applying. But before we do that, I really want to bring home the excitement here around the amount of money that's available to solve this. And these are prize challenge awards. So it's non-dilutive, prize awards that you can do with what you like. And essentially we are going to be funding no more than 8 awards under the main category. So 3 million of it will be split up equally amongst up to 8 awards. If we don't have enough high quality proposals, then they will get a larger amount per those. So we might only fund 6 in this bucket. And again, then you'll split that 3 million up amongst those 6. But in addition to that, we do have a larger grand prize for the single best idea that we get in. And that'll be $1 million grand prize to that one sole winner. So in total, there'll be a maximum of 9 awards, or potentially a few less, but the full 4 million will be distributed. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to my colleagues at Ensemble. And I hope all of you are as excited to participate in this challenge or spread the word about it to people who you think can contribute as I am and as we are at both HHS and ASN. Oliver, can you take us through all of the criteria?
Absolutely. Thank you so much. So let's begin with the submission requirements. So first, to just kind of frame the solution areas or focus areas. So we have 5. I'm going to go through them, but it is important to call out that, the solutions should fit within one of these focus areas, but we want to encourage innovative concepts. So these kind of examples in the sub header are not prescriptive. We're looking for innovative concepts or outside the box thinking. So I don't want you to think that, they have to fit within exactly these areas. For example, for digital tools assisting candidates in medical clinical criteria like BMI or blood pressure, there could be other donor readiness and eligibility solutions beyond just those digital tools. So just wanted to call that out. But just to go through the 5 focus areas, we have public awareness and mentorship. These could be things like interventions connecting candidates with donor mentors using a community-based framework. We have the donor readiness and eligibility category. So these could be things like digital tools assessing candidates in meeting clinical criteria like BMI or blood pressure. We have a donor interventions focus area. So these could be things like behavioral or economic models to help, for example, automate wage reimbursement to increase rates. Then we have center practices and decision support. So these could be things like protocols to reduce variability, delays, and lower the administrative friction at transplant centers. And then we also have donor-centered outcomes. So these could be things like tracking systems, prioritizing long-term donor satisfaction, health, and well-being. So again, we are trying to frame the solutions within these focus areas. We hope that they are both broad enough to really capture different areas which can tackle the friction points, but also leave enough room for creativity so that we can get some of these outside the box concepts or innovations to really move the needle on the transplantation problem. Let's go to the next slide. Okay, so this is very important. So when you are beginning your submission, I want you to carefully consider which track you will be selecting your submission through. There's 2 tracks. Track A is the solutions in practice, and track B is scalable prototypes. So track A would be things, interventions that are already piloted or active, where there could be a clever pivot into the transplantation solution kind of area. So we are looking for a variety of submission inputs. This would include a narrative with a max of 1,500 words, impact data, a human co-designed statement, and an implementation guide or playbook to show how the solution might be able to be used in this area. So the solutions in practice, again, are for interventions that are already piloted or active. And then we have track B, scalable prototypes. So this would be more novel, innovative, or new models that you would be creating or proposing to create. So for scalable prototypes, we have high fidelity digital tools or care models that are ready for pilot testing. We'd be looking to focus on your functional beta version, wireframes, and compliance plans. So for the submission into this category, we'd again be looking at a narrative, evidence of potential efficacy. So these could be like functional beta wireframes or standardized protocols. So again, for digital tools, you might have a functional version or a detailed wireframe, including the technical architecture of that solution. And then for care models, we would be looking for a complete set of standardized protocols, screening instruments, or decision support tools. We would also be looking for a path to implementation with milestone-based timelines and then a compliance plan as well, addressing Section 508 accessibility and FIPS 199 security standards. So I'll repeat this again, but there are two tracks. Carefully consider where your solution might fit. And for both tracks, there will be max 12-page PDF. Yeah, Stefan, go ahead.
I just wanted to clarify something too. So for track A, you'd mentioned that they could be solutions. We expected them to be solutions that are already existing in practice, and that you mentioned could be pivoted into the field of nephrology or into this situation. But that can also include ones that already are in the field of nephrology and
Yeah,
just want to raise greater awareness or elevate its, scale in the marketplace and so on. So it doesn't have to be new to nephrology. It could be something that's already being used, but maybe not enough people know about it or adopted it yet. Right.
absolutely. Absolutely. Yep.
So the big
Thank you for
difference here is track A is already built in practice somewhere, and track B being more at the idea stage or early prototype and not really in practice yet, but wanting to raise visibility and further prove it out. So different forms of evidence of how you would show success in this scenario, but two different approaches, either built already or being built or in concept.
that.
Great, thank
Absolutely.
you.
Thank you. Next slide. All right, so we're going to touch on the criteria that all of these solutions will be judged. So across both tracks, there'll be similar evaluation criteria. So first, just for your awareness, all of these entries will be assessed by a panel of judges who are federal employees or external experts with direct experience relevant to nephrology and transplantation. So we will do a preliminary evaluation for eligibility and completeness, and then that will move to a scoring panel by the judges, and then that will finally be moved to a federal review panel to make the ultimate determination on the prizes. So there are four criteria. They have slightly different weights, so it is important to think about that when creating your solution. The first criteria is the alignment to challenge focus areas. So does the proposed solution demonstrate clear and credible potential to measurably increase living donation rates by addressing the specific goals of one or more defined focus area? So again, we do want the framing of these solutions to be within those challenge focus areas, and that is 15 points. Then we have the donor experience, which is 35 points, so a little bit more weight there. Does the solution address the challenge designated focus area for donor candidates, making the process demonstrably easier to start and complete? So this is more looking at the actual donor experience and is it improving that donor experience within these focus areas, considering the friction points, and really kind of trying to move the needle for their experience. Then we have clinical feasibility, which is 25 points. And the guiding question there is the idea practical? How practical and adaptable is the solution for widespread adoption within a typical clinical setting? So this is looking more at feasibility, practicality, and adaptability. Then the final criteria is technical sustainability. This is also 25 points. And our guiding question there is, does the application demonstrate a clear plan for making advancements permanent? Is the solution designed to thrive for years after the initial prize money is awarded? Of course, we are looking for solutions that move the needle towards our ultimate 2030 goal of doubling the amount of living donors. So this is just a crucial element that we can evaluate if the solution has real legs to move and affect the market for years to come. So with that, we can jump to the next slide, and then we'll go over the timeline, which again is very important. So we launched mid-April. We are now in kind of the open submission or briefing phase where folks like yourselves are joining these webinars. We will have another webinar. So if your colleague missed this, we invite them to participate on the May 12th informational webinar. You can find and register for that on the challenge website. But right now we're in the open submission period. We invite you to submit notice of interest on the website. We invite you to register, to create your user profile, and then to submit. So the submission deadline is June 15th. By that point, if you are interested in participating in the challenge, you must register and then you must submit. There's no hard registration deadline. You could register the day before the challenge closes and submit as well. But we highly encourage you to register today for the challenge so that you can access the submission portal and that we're aware of how many solutions we're going to be coming in. This just helps a lot from preparing for the judge panel. But the important call out here is that it's June 15th. Um, Please register and submit by that time. And if you don't, you won't be eligible for this prize challenge. I know in the Q&A we got a question if there's going to be another period of submissions. Not for this challenge, right? So to participate in this challenge, that is the hard deadline. Um, then we will go into judging with the anticipated date of announcing the winners August 17th. Again, these are that's a rough deadline, but in general, that's when we'll aim to announce the winners. And there might be some post-winner activity that, could happen after that, but this is the current timeline. So again, just to reinforce the submission deadline, the entries must be submitted by June 15th. And that is again, just a crucial date. So register today and make sure that your submission's in by that point. And please visit kidneyxempowerchallenge.org where you will be able to access both the registration form, you'll create a simple login, and then once you log in, you'll be able to get access to that submission portal, which will exist on the top nav bar. So yeah, again, we'll go quickly through the how to enter. Um, so register on that challenge website. If you haven't done that, I recommend that you do that today or this week. Very straightforward. You'll be able to implement the registration in a matter of, 1 to 2 minutes. Very, very simple and straightforward. Like I said, if you're already attending the informational webinar, so that's great. And we will hold one more on May 12th. And then finally, submit your challenge entry. All of this hopefully is very streamlined relative to other kind of processes that this hopefully is a lot simpler than a grant, for example, because you are able to just quickly access the submission portal, answer those fields, upload your 12-page PDF, and then hit submit. So that is the key kind of three-step flow to how to enter this prize challenge. And again, KidneyXempowerChallenge.org is the main hub of this challenge. So please visit that for more information, resources. That's also where we'll be posting the video of this webinar and the slides to this webinar. Next slide, please. So again, we have our challenge registration flow. That is important because that's where you will set your password and team details to log in. You'll jump into one of these webinars where we can give you more details, and then you will access the submission portal for the PDF upload. You can go to the next slide. Okay, so it's important to understand the eligibility rules. So this challenge is open to individuals, teams, or organizational entities. So again, you must register on the challenge website. You must comply with all requirements, deadlines, and submission guidelines. Individuals must be U.S. citizens or permanent residents of the United States. Similarly, organizations must be an entity incorporated in and maintaining a primary place of business in the United States or its territories. So this challenge is not eligible for international companies or organizations or individuals, you must be a citizen or permanent resident. And then again, just to call out that individuals shall not be federal employees acting within the scope of their employment or under the employment of HHS, acting in their personal capacity. And of course, challenge contractors and their immediate family members cannot be eligible to participate or to be judges of the challenge. Let's go to the next slide. So again, these are also important. There are one or two callouts that I will highlight, but participants may not use federal funds from a grant, cooperative agreements, or contract to develop their challenge submissions. So we get this question often. Basically, the money used to develop your submission should not be derived from a grant, co-op, or contract. Um, and then participants agree to assume any and all risks and waive claims against the federal government, except in the case of willful misconduct. Participants are not required to obtain any liability insurance or indemnify the federal government. So again, that kind of lowers the barrier to entry. Um, the participants warrant that they are the sole author and owner of the submission or have the rights to use, improve existing work, and that the submission does not infringe on third-party rights. Um, and then I do want to call out it's not defined, or it's defined in the bottom bullet, but we do get this question. Participants retain all other intellectual property rights. So you own this. This is not going to be owned by HHS, but by participating, participants grant HHS an irrevocable, paid-up, royalty-free, non-exclusive worldwide license to reproduce, publish, post, link to, share, and display the submission publicly. So really what that's saying is that if you are a winner, HHS has the right to share, the title and some content from your submission. But they do not own the submission. You own the intellectual property associated with that. So I just wanted to call that out. So winning the cash prize is contingent upon completing and submitting all required winner verification and payment documents within 10 days of formal notification. So I hope you win. And when you win, I hope that you are able to be responsive to our basically document and winner verification processes so that we can pay you. So it is very important to be responsive to those. And then participants under 18 years of age must have signed permission from a parent or legal guardian to participate and to accept a cash prize. So in those circumstances, we will follow up with the relevant paperwork. So hopefully that is pretty straightforward. With that, we can jump to the next slide. And we do have some time reserved for Q&A. So I want to give folks a minute to begin asking some questions. I will help moderate and I'll basically, ask the question and then I'll direct that to Stefan if it's more HHS question or to the ASN team, or if it's relevant to just the prize rules, I'd be happy to address that. Um, so here we go. What would be a few examples of the entity types that you'd be funding? It looks like Rachel, you just answered that. But if you'd like to just voice your answer, we can just start kind of voicing over the answers.
Yeah,
But please take it away.
absolutely. So, as I just wrote in the chat, provided that your entity meets the eligibility as well as the administrative and legal rules that Mr. Gerlin just outlined, you are welcome to submit. We really want a diverse variety of organizations, entity types, to share your good ideas about how to lower the barriers to entry and better support living donors. I do want to note that this is a prize competition, not a traditional research funding grant, like those of you who may be used to submitting to the NIH for grants are. So we're really looking for something a little bit further along the development pathway than a traditional grant might be. So something that you're, as was mentioned, perhaps already doing your own institution that's working really well to better support living donors, or maybe a tool that you have in development that's been used in other fields of medicine or in the general population that you think could be modified to have specific or unique benefits to help overcoming some of the friction points that living donors may face. So not a traditional research grant, but we want many people from many different domains to consider applying, provided you meet the legal and administrative eligibility rules. And please, colleagues, ASN or HHS side, add anything that I didn't, that I should have in response to that question.
Yeah, just to build on your comment about it being a prize challenge, if you haven't participated in prize challenge competitions hosted by the federal government before, not just HHS but in general, this is enabled by the American Competes Act and Innovations Act, and it is essentially a prize award. And I know this is one of the questions that came up, and we tried to address it in the Q&A. But essentially, it's not a grant requiring you to do anything post award. Rather, it is an award for the best idea or proposal that you submitted in and that met the correct criteria and was most innovative and so on. We want to celebrate, that innovative thought. So once you get the money, you can do whatever you want with it. Now, we hope that you'll take the money to further advance adoption of those solutions. In fact, I believe for the winners of this award, we will have some technical assistance available to help them with the commercialization plan and some other ways to kind of figure out how to actually then operationalize getting this into the market. But again, you can take it and go to Applebee's if you like. We would encourage you to use it for advancing your great ideas.
Yeah. So we have another question. Is there a list of required sections for track B submission that we can review before starting the application? For example, a PDF version of all the required fields and sections. So yeah, there is a list. If you want to, Amanda, jump back to the section where we have the tracks, you will see the various sections. So those sections are right here. Um, so look at those bullets. Those are kind of the bullets that we would ask your solution address or your concept paper address. Um, Also, I can address the next question on this slide. So regarding the prototype, can it be in an interactive link, i.e. a mobile application? So we'd encourage you to submit that link, but then also show some wireframes or technical architecture where you kind of explain the user flow um, because so I would encourage some screenshots of your wireframes or your mock-ups, as well as just basically a technical architecture so that we understand what the overall user flow of the app is. You're welcome to also submit the interactive link, but just an interactive link is not going to be able to give reviewers the full picture. Of that solution in a way that, wireframes and the technical kind of user flow will go. Yeah, Stefan, jump on in.
Yeah, maybe another way to say it is I would include in your 12-page narrative, the 12-page submission, each one of these bullet points and whether you're track A or track B, and you've got actual text responding to each one of those. Now, if you want to add a link to an example to provide additional context or to see it kind of in action, that's fine. But I would try to explain and not just put a link in and say, okay, we think this addresses every one of these areas. Make sure you're answering each of the bullet point areas. And then if you've got a specific link that you want to share at any of those points, you can put it in after that for some additional context. But to
Yeah.
try to address them both out, with text first.
Yeah. Okay, so we've answered those questions. I'm going to jump to the next one. So, can a person or organization submit more than one entry in one or both tracks? So, according to the rules, you would be able to provide more than one entry. That isn't necessarily against the rules. We do typically encourage folks to really focus on one quality solution and submittal that just typically tends to perform better than, trying to submit to both. There's no rule against it though. I will say though that the way our kind of submission portal is set up, if you are interested in submitting two different tracks, you'll have to create two different registration slash users, and then each one of those would be able to submit to one or other tracks. So just logistically, you would need basically two profiles, so that the portal can kind of capture those. But you could use similar, registration details, just maybe a different email. But again, we do encourage folks to focus on one strong solution, but it's not against the rules. Stefan?
Oliver, can you clarify, building on that, can you clarify how many? So let's say somebody does submit more than one. Maybe they submit multiple in track A and they also decide to throw in a track B while they're at it. And they've created a different user profile to be able to do that because, right,
Yeah.
you can only have one submission per user profile. Um,
Yeah.
can you then say what happens, once we get to the point of judging and scoring? Can the same organization or individual win more than one award? Or for each of those ideas, or is one organization, one individual limited to just receiving one award, i.e., the best of the ideas that they submitted?
So according to the rules, that's not directly addressed in the rules whether one organization can win two. In theory, that could happen. I just have never seen that. It's just not, I would say, a winning strategy. Again, from a just looking at the pure rules, in theory that could happen, but I again just would not encourage that strategy if you're really looking to drive, a high quality solution. Um, it's just gonna it's just gonna be much harder to do this. But again, from just a pure rules standpoint, that could be possible, but we just don't encourage that. That's just not, I've just never seen that be a successful strategy. Okay. Um, is a tenure track faculty member of a U.S. university eligible to participate if he or she is currently not a U.S. citizen nor a permanent resident? So no, you would not be able to, as a if you are participating, you must be a U.S. citizen or permanent resident. Um, the U.S. university could participate because they are, as an organization or an entity, they do have a principal place of business in the United States. But in terms of just individuals participating, they must be U.S. citizens or permanent residents. This is part of the America Competes Act authority that we are running the prize challenge through. That's just the rules. Yeah. Can we use data or tools available from the United States Renal Data System, even though it is a federal contractor that provides that data or tools? So, Suzanne, I see you type an answer. Do you want to jump in there?
Sure. So I was just typing in that the USRDS data, the United States Renal Data System, is a public resource. So even though it is created through a federal contract, since it is a public resource, one should be able to use the USRDS data to illustrate the importance of their solution. Please, anybody add color to that comment if you'd like. That is my interpretation, though.
Absolutely agreed. You're absolutely allowed to use public health data sources. There's, that's totally fine. Stefan, any other color there?
No, I would encourage to use as much of what's already available to the market in general. I think what you're referring to in the question is more a matter of taking existing funded or previously awarded funding from federal government to then use that funding to develop something under this challenge, and that's a little bit different than taking something that's already been funded and built and available to then leverage. So yes, you can't double dip and repurpose existing funding to build this, but you can take advantage of other things that were previously built with federal funding to then develop this. Oh.
Yeah, absolutely. In the submission application, can we include image, video, or other digital items? So again, we encourage you to focus on the kind of development of the text in the PDF. In that PDF, you certainly can have screenshots of, mock-ups. Video, I would say is a little bit tougher because again, the submission is a 12-page PDF.
Maybe another way to think about it too is you're guaranteed to have the application reviewers or the proposal reviewers to review everything that's actually in the PDF. And if there's a link in there, there's no guarantee they'll click on it and review what's there. So
Yeah.
you
Yep.
make sure you actually have all the context that you want, that you feel this will sufficiently address the questions in the different fields. Have that be very legible, like in the 12 page PDF. If you have a hyperlink, there's a chance they'll click on it and review it for additional context. It's not necessarily guaranteed.
Yeah. So we have another question. Can you talk a little bit more about the human co-design statement and what you're expecting there? So I can pass that to the HHS or ASN team. From my point of view, it's just we are looking to ensure that you are working with actual kind of end users or end stakeholders and that it's being designed in collaboration with them. So that, again, because we're looking at addressing these friction points and improving the experience of the various stakeholders in the transplantation and living kidney donor, universe. It's important that those solutions are designed in collaboration with them. So that's my interpretation of it, but Stefan or ASN.
Yeah, I mean, we've always talked about how we want to put patients at the center of everything, and starting with the patient in mind. And in this case, the patient being not only the recipient of the transplant, but also the more importantly, the for this case in this challenge, the donor and thinking through their needs and so on. So that means you got to include them in it, right? It's not just being built for them, but it's being built with them with some regard. And so, if it's something that's in track A, then how have you previously, or how are you currently in an ongoing basis, including that perspective into the design and development of the tools and evaluation of it ongoing? And in track B, for something that's new, based on what existing conversations or previous conversations have you had with them to help you inform you in building it, or what is your plan for going out and engaging with them? But figuring through how can you really make them part of the process to make sure that it's going to truly meet their needs, and you're designing it with them, not just for them.
Yeah,
ASN, I'm sure you have something to add there as well, potentially, but that's how I look at it.
Yeah, we just want to hear that at the time of submission, you've received input from the people who are actually going to be using this tool or benefiting from your innovation in the real world. If you submit and people who are going to be using it or benefiting haven't seen it yet, that is not going to be a particularly strong application. So talk to us about that process.
yeah. All right, I have another question. So with regards to compliance, do we need to consider FHIR HL7 interoperability standards? This is a good question for you, Stefan.
Sure. So while we certainly support, the adoption of standards wherever possible, whether they be data standards, HL7 standards, or any other standards, we like it when there's consensus, industry-driven standards that we can back up and support. And sometimes they are required for participation in certain, uh, you know, uh, certification criteria to integrate with EHRs or whatever else it may be. But in the case of this challenge, there's so much, variability in what the submissions can look like. It's not necessarily something that has to be addressed in every submission. Now, if you have a tool that's dependent upon integration, and you think that HL7 Fire is the best way to do some of that and to get data, either for ingesting data into your solutions or for feeding data back into an EHR, whatever it may be. I mean, again, there's so much variety here. It's really hard to determine, but you would just need to be compliant with whatever other existing federal policies or laws are there, or make sure you try to address that. So yeah, so it's not going to be part of every submission I'm expecting, but could there be a submission where you'd want to highlight what standards you're using, including HL7 Fire, but maybe even others? Then absolutely, I think it would only benefit you to list that out and to acknowledge that you're aware of that need, because it helps show a little bit more of a practical approach where you understand some of the challenges or limitations you might have to overcome to get it integrated. But again, you may have some solutions that have nothing to do with the data interoperability side of things. It may be more focused on just kind of a program management policy approach, patient engagement tactic. I'm not sure, so it could be any number of different things.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so we have a similar question as we received. If we intend to develop a mobile app, can we publish it on the App Store and submit the link with the PDF? So again, that would be well within your rights to do. There's nothing stopping you. We just want to emphasize that the the judges will be looking at that 12-page PDF, right? So it's useful, and especially if you get through mobile app publication on an app store, that to me would show, evidence of potential efficacy, show like, you'd be able to use that within your path to implementation. So that would be a good milestone, but the 12-page PDF is what's going to be reviewed. The judges might be able to jump there, but we're not able to say for sure if that's going to happen. So really focusing on that 12-page PDF is the safest thing. But if you are able to push it through the App Store, that would be a great milestone to add. And, again, I think that would bolster your submission, and you would be able to describe that in the submission, which would be great. Um, so we have a question we might need to just table or address in a later FAQ. How is the prize money taxed if submission is from a 501(c)(3)? Is this like a lottery winnings taxed at a very high rate? So I want to answer this carefully, um, because it does depend on the organization. So I don't think it's treated like a lottery winning. I think it's treated more like standard revenue, basically. But again, we will follow up on that and add that to our FAQ so that we're answering that question with a little bit more precision. And again, it just depends. There's a few factors on that. Can we include links to videos in the PDF? Yeah, we've already answered that one. So thank you. I see you just said okay, question answered. Again, we got another question about compliance and considering HL7 fire interoperability framework standards. So again, if your solution requires some level of interoperability, I think that would be important, but um, this is it just totally depends on the unique nature of your solution. Um, can I get a copy of the Q&A? So what we're going to be doing, this is a good call out, is that after this, we'll be processing this video. We will be uploading it to the KidneyX empowerchallenge.org website. We will also be updating our FAQs. So you'll see if you jump on that website that we have some FAQs. That list will get longer and we'll be adding FAQs from this webinar. So that would be where you'd kind of get the copy of the Q&A is jump on the website. I encourage everyone to use the challenge website. That's where we'll be updating everything. So you'll be able to download the webinar slides, you'll be able to watch this webinar again, and then you'll also be able to look at the Q&A in the FAQ section. So it looks like we are just about out of time for questions. I do want to pass it back to Stefan and the ASN team for any concluding remarks. Amanda, if you want to jump to that final slide. And before we close out, just from my side, I want to say thank you all for your interest in this important challenge. It really is all about you and your submissions, your solutions, your innovative concepts. So again, thank you so much for your interest in your challenge. And the last kind of plug is to go and register for the challenge today. But concluding remarks from HHS and ASN team.
Great. Thank you again, Oliver and Amanda, for walking us through everything it's going to take to get someone to submit to this challenge and through the Q&A. We tried to address as many of the questions as possible. And again, if we didn't get to them, we'll try to address them in the FAQs. One other one that I did want to call out, there was a question early on about who will the reviewers be and the judges for this. I tried to address it in there, but essentially it's going to be a mix of subject matter experts who cut across both various federal agencies who have some level of experience or expertise to lend to this challenge. And so they're very relevant to it, as well as a bunch of industry, thought leaders and others who do work in the space, including others who have experience going through that transplantation process and donor process. So they will certainly be excluded from being able to participate and would have to recuse themselves if there's any involvement or conflicts of interest. But it will be a wide variety of SMEs, both from inside government and outside of government, that will be judging these applications. And if any of you know that you're not going to apply, by all means, still, I would recommend subscribing to follow and track the challenge and help promote it to others and so on. The last thing I just want to mention again is just we're extremely excited about this. It's $4 million with a grand prize of $1 million that's going to go to one entity. We really hope that all of you who showed interest in today's call are out there celebrating this and promoting it to as many people as you know. Sharing it on social media, emailing it to friends and colleagues, passing it along in a text message that you think somebody has, maybe some connection to it or whatever it may be. And so again, we want to get as wide of a net of the greatest and brightest ideas that are out there, because ultimately, hopefully, we can lift that up, celebrate it, and then that can lend to a greater adoption of those types of practices in the marketplace and really move the needle on getting more living donors to register and to sign up to being a donor, and then also to make sure we're supporting them after they've made that courageous step, supporting them through the entire process, including after they've done the transplant, treatment and services. So we want to be able to fully support them, through all of that as well. So again, thank you very much, ASN. Any final remarks on your end?
Final remark would just be to say thank you again, everybody, for a very robust webinar. And remember, we're trying to support people who are aiming to give a gift of life. And we can't emphasize enough how much this need is quite critical. So thank you again for participating and considering sharing your great ideas and solutions to this challenge. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Have a wonderful day. Bye now.
Bye.